Tonight, a record deficit, but the Premier pledges to climb back to surplus without slashing jobs.
We've made a decision not to cut more deeply into the public service.
While the opposition and business are underwhelmed, the welfare sector says it's responsible.
The government has missed an opportunity to put some real targeted stimulus into the economy.
This is a very responsible and positive budget.
A hospital in lockdown bracing for more cases of Legionella. And no charges against the priest named in the Senate by Nick Xenophon. Good evening, Jessica Harmson with ABC News. First to the state budget, Jay Weatherall's delivered a record deficit along with more spending than cuts. But the Premier and Treasurer says he can still return the budget to surplus down the track. Here's state political reporter Nick Harmson with all the key points.
This budget effectively fires the starter's gun on the state election campaign. The Premier's painting it as a race between tortoise and hare, slash and burn to rush back to surplus or take the slow and steady path. He's certainly in no hurry. This is how the budget forecasts looked 12 months ago. And this is how they are today. A record $1.3 billion deficit this year, with a predicted return to surplus in 3 years based on the assumption of growing revenues. Although some accounting changes in this budget make the figures look a little worse than they'd otherwise be. Government debt is expected to peak at $9.5 billion, more than half the government's annual income. In an election year, the Premier's brought out the chequebook, $1.3 billion in new spending. But when savings measures and Commonwealth cash are factored in, the net result is $130 million.
Today is a fair but frugal budget. They've welcomed a reduction to car registration costs and more public housing.
Significant social infrastructure that helps some of the most disadvantaged people in this state.
As well as lower water and electricity prices, more counselling and legal services and $100 million for disability services.
Elements that I think the social services sector have been looking for a number of years.
This is the best disability budget we've seen. It now lays a fully funded
next 2 years.
Kevin Rudd is warning his deflated Labor colleagues to stop making alibis for a government defeat at the general election. Federal MPs are heading back home ahead of Parliament's final sittings. Mr Rudd says they should stop hauling up the white flag, but at least 2 have started packing up their offices in case they lose their seats in September. Here's Chief Political Correspondent Mark Simpkin at Parliament House.
So the election's 100 days away, but who's counting? Turns out pretty much everyone.
Archbishop Hepworth did not respond to the ABC's requests for an interview. Alina Eacott, ABC News, Adelaide.
North and South Korea have agreed to hold talks after months of tension and threats of war on the peninsula. The North proposed the meeting and wants to discuss reopening a joint industrial zone which employed more than 50,000 North Koreans. The complex ground to a halt when Pyongyang ordered its citizens to stop working there 2 months ago. The announcement came as South Korea celebrated its Memorial Day. Seoul welcomed the talks but said there won't be progress on economic development while the North is pursuing its nuclear weapons program. There are new fears the Syrian conflict could spread to its neighbours after the fall of a rebel-held town near the Lebanese border. Regime forces recaptured the town of Qusayr with the help of fighters from the Lebanese Hezbollah movement. Syria's rebels say this gives them the right to launch attacks in Lebanon. Here's Middle East correspondent Matt Brown.
After 3 weeks of intense fighting, the Syrian army claimed its prize.
To move to the Swans ahead of the 2008 season. And the Crows have made 3 changes to their side to play Sydney on Saturday afternoon at Football Park, with Sean McKernan, Ricky Henderson and Brad Crouch the inclusions. The Swans have made 2 changes, with Tommy Walsh out with a season-ending hamstring injury and Lewis Jetta because of shin soreness.
ABC News.
Let's check out all the weather details now, starting with tonight's weather photo. It was taken on the Port River and comes from Jenny Leaney of Stony Fell. In Adelaide today, it reached 18.4 degrees about 2:30 this afternoon. The overnight low was 12.1. Across the state today, Moomba recorded the top temperature of just 23 degrees. It was mostly sunny with 16 in Coober Pedy and overcast with 19 degrees for Whyalla. Elsewhere interstate, it was cloudy in Townsville, Brisbane, Alice Springs and Melbourne. Sydney had an overcast day with a top of 20 degrees and it reached just 15 in the national capital. The satellite picture shows cloud over much of the country, generating widespread rain, while cloud over coastal Queensland and New South Wales is only bringing light showers to those regions. There will be light rain over South Australia tomorrow, and a trough over the tropics will cause rain and storms in the top end. Around the country tomorrow, there will be rain at times for Melbourne, a possible shower with a top of 23 degrees in Brisbane, and it'll be mostly sunny with 32 in Darwin. In the north of our state tomorrow, a mostly sunny day with 20 degrees in Coober Pedy. There will be an early shower or two with 19 degrees in Ceduna and a top of 18 for Port Pirie. There'll be showers right across the south tomorrow. Clare's heading for a top of 15. There'll be an early shower or two with 18 degrees in Port Lincoln. Similar conditions forecast for Maitland. A strong wind warning's current for Investigator Strait and central and southeast coasts tonight. A shower or two clearing in the city tomorrow with a top of 17 degrees, dropping down to 12 degrees overnight. Sunrise at 18 minutes past 7 and sunset about 10 past 5. On the waters, winds southwesterly to 15 knots, becoming variable below 10 knots in the evening, and seas rising to 1 metre. Looking further ahead, and showers should clear in time for the weekend, but it'll be cool and partly cloudy into next week. A top of 19 degrees on Sunday, 20 degrees for the public holiday on Monday, and a top of 18 this time next week. Now recapping tonight's main story, Jay Weatherill has delivered a record deficit along with more spending than cuts. The Premier and Treasurer says he can still return the budget to surplus down the track. Business and the opposition are underwhelmed, while the welfare sector has described the budget as responsible. And that's the news for now. Stay with us for a special edition of 7:30 SA with more detail on the state budget with Simon Royal.